John, first off, congratulations on your 10-year run as general manager of the Denver Broncos and now your elevated role within this new structure. I know you had many conversations with Joe Ellis leading up to this decision. So what were those conversations like that eventually led you to relinquish the reins as general manager of this team and become solely president of football operations?
I think that, it was a couple weeks ago we started chatting about it, and I think it was, the opportunity was presented to at least look at that. I think, the main goal is to try to figure out how we can get the Denver Broncos better and playing like we expect ourselves to play. And so, but then I think once I talked to Joe and I started getting a little bit away from the football side and I started realizing what wanted to do personally and turning 60 years old this year and being in football for a long, long time, started kind of looking at it at, what would I like to do if I don't do this and if I can move up, not have to do this day to day. And so gave me that opportunity and, I got excited about that because I think it is time the gym is a huge job. There's a lot to it. It's got even bigger and bigger each year. And the responsibility and management of people that you have in that position. So thought it was at this point in time with what I want to do personally that I could still be involved with the organization, be involved in the big decisions, but also be able to get a little bit more personal time.
Well, in your statement, you said that this will give you the opportunity to focus more on the big picture for the Denver Broncos. So from that 30,000 feet perspective, what are some of the areas of this organization that you hope to concentrate on here in your new role?
Well, I think the first thing, obviously, we got to find a GM, and I think that's going to be the key thing is find the right guy for this organization that's going to come in and take the controls of the day-to-day operations and work with Vic and find ways to get this football team better. Obviously, I think that we got a lot of big decisions this offseason. We got Von Miller and more, Justin Simmons and a lot of different things that we're going to have to take care of. But before we do all that, we've got to get the new GM acclimated, get him knowing what our football team is, get his perspective, an outside perspective, which will help us also. And to be able to put all those thoughts together, then come together with a plan that, going into this offseason and going into the draft, the new GM and Vic and everybody's on the same page.
Well, like you mentioned, first order of business is hiring a new general manager who will join Vic Fangio and reporting to you for the 2021 season. So what about this organization should make hopeful GMs excited to take on this role?
Well, I think the track record of the organization and, being in Denver and, the lifestyle that we have in Colorado, the expectations of the Denver Broncos, the fan base that we have with the Denver Broncos, all that is known throughout the NFL. And I think that to be able to come to an organization that's committed to winning, that's what the standard is winning and winning championships, but also, a great place to live. And also a young roster that has a chance to continue to get better and better. And, we've got, with the cap going where it is this year, going down, that, to have the flexibility to maneuver within the roster with where we're set up as far as contracts. And so I think it's a very exciting job for someone to come in here and want to take the reins and have, be given the opportunity to be as good as they can possibly be.
Well, Coach Fangio will lend a hand in the search for a new GM. So can you express just how important that GM head coach relationship really is?
Well, it is. It's important in the fact that they're both on the same page. Now, they both have responsibilities, and I think that relationship's always very, very important. But then each GM has his responsibilities, and your head coach has his responsibilities. But for them to get on the same page, you want to give your head coach the best opportunity to win. And that usually comes from the personnel side and the GM who's making those decisions. And so that's why it's important to have that relationship.
Another person who will help in the search of a new general manager will be former Vice President of Player Personnel, Matt Russell, who is retiring after 20 years in the business. You two have really been in this together since the beginning. So what does Matt Russell really mean to you?
Well, I'm excited for Matt. I know that he mulled over what he wanted to do and the decision that he made. I think he feels excited about that. He's a family guy with two kids right in their teen years now, that he can be able to be heavily involved in their sports, which he was at this point in time, but even more so now. But we could have never done what we did without Matt Russell. And Matt was a guy that was a confidant for me, a guy that I trusted very, very much. I think he's a very, very good football man and a great talent evaluator. So he was a big part of the success that we had.
Well, as a whole, what is it that you are most proud of when you look back on your career as the general manager for the Denver Broncos?
I think that, obviously when I got here, where the organization was down, had been down, and so to be able to get it turned around and get back to Super Bowls, get back to Super Bowl 48 and 13, and then 15 to be able to win one, was a highlight for me as a GM, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that run. And the hard thing, what I did learn is how hard it is to get back, and it's hard to maintain that level with the way the NFL is and how they keep everybody competitive. It's very difficult, but I'm very proud of being a part of a team that won a Super Bowl, and that's a great feeling.
Well, I'm sure Broncos country is looking forward to seeing how this new structure really impacts things here in 2021. But before we get into what's next, as you think back on this 2020 season, from the virtual offseason to game postponements, injuries, and even a wide receiver at quarterback, can you put it into perspective just how challenging the season was for this organization?
No, not really. I think that, obviously that's the most disappointing thing is that, but in the NFL, there's not a lot of excuses. You can't make a lot of excuses. And, offensively, we played well at times. We were inconsistent at times. We had a ton of injuries. Defensively, we didn't play as well as we wanted to, but we lost some key players over there. And so, you go back, then you throw COVID in there and everything that we had to go through with COVID, but everybody else in the league had to go through that too. So we were battling teams that were doing the same thing. But I think, when you look at where we were, we realize we're a young football team, but, we can't have the turnovers that we had, and even though yesterday we got 4 turnovers, that was, overall for the year, we didn't get a lot of turnovers. And that's a key stat in this league as far as turnover ratio. And we were last by double of, the turnover ratio. So that number one, if we can clear that up right there, that's going to give us a heck of a lot better chance to win some football games.
Well, it was announced just a couple of weeks before season's end that Vic Fangio would remain on staff. So in a year with so many injuries and strange variables, how did you go about evaluating Coach Fangio?
Well, I think that's a big part of it. The fact that, when you look at the way the football team played and the effort that they played with week in and week out, I think that's a telltale of, that you got a football team that respects their head coach. And they played 60 minutes to the end yesterday, weren't able to get it done at the end of the game there. But there wasn't one time that whole football game yesterday that nobody wasn't playing as hard as they could play. And I think that's a real tribute to what Vic did this year and trying to keep everybody motivated to play hard. Now, a lot of things went against us and the ball bounced against us, but I thought he did a tremendous job of keeping these guys motivated, and they wanted to play hard for Vic.
This time last year, we were discussing Lock's small sample size, but now there are 18 games worth of film on Drew Lock. So in what ways did you really see him progress throughout this year? And what areas do you see the biggest room for improvement?
Well, I think that, I'm still a believer in Drew Lock. He's a young quarterback. I think he's talented physically enough to do it. I think he's got the mental capacity to do it. And I like how he's built and the fact that he wants to be great. So he does have that ability to be that guy. Now, obviously, with the things we went through when we talk about the offseason, with no offseason and no preseason, a real young offense around him, a new offensive coordinator. So you throw all those things into the basket, and it was very difficult for Drew. And so, I'm hoping that, and I know he will, he'll work hard this offseason, continue to get better and better, and have another year under his belt. Every snap he took this year will benefit him going into next year, and give him a chance to continue to improve. So, like I said, I still think Drew can be a very good quarterback in this league and can, lead us to Super Bowls. But again, that's going to be up to him, and we're going to have to see how he makes strides from here.
How much do you believe that just having some consistency with his coaching staff will help Drew in the future?
Well, I think it'll help a lot. I think it'll help everybody. With the defense, now everybody's familiar with the defense as well as the offense. Again, that's, you're changing your offense with Zoom calls in the offseason with no practices, and then you get in training camp and the first time they're really around each other. So that makes it very difficult. So I think it's going to be very beneficial. I think Pat Shurmur is a very good offensive coordinator. He'll get a better feel for Drew and vice versa, and what Drew likes, what does well, and Pat will start to realize that too. So I just think that the working relationship that they'll have, as well as Mike Shula jumping in there, who's got tremendous experience at that position too, that he's got a chance with the guys that we've got to get a lot better.
Well, one of the year's best stories was the reinvention of Garett Bolles. What about his progress this year really inspired you to offer him a contract that keeps him in a Broncos uniform really for the foreseeable future?
I'm proud of Garett. I think he did. He had a tremendous year, as you said. He really came back, had a tough year last year, but really bounced back this year. I think obviously Mike Munchak and Chris Cooper as a coach did a tremendous job and helped him a lot, being next to Dalton Reisner all year and how they do things and getting comfortable with each other. So Garett wants to be great, and I love how he's built that way, his mentality of what he wants to do. And so I think he's just scratching the surface. I still believe that he's got a high ceiling and has got a lot of room to grow. And but I know one thing about Garett is he'll continue to work at it.
Now, I know you will be advising the new GM on many fronts, but in terms of Justin Simmons, I know last year you guys got really close to getting a deal done, but eventually were forced to tag him. So how critical will it be for the Broncos to get a deal done with Justin this year?
Well, we'd like to get a deal. We wanted to get a deal done last year, and we want to get a deal done with Justin. He's a very good football player, and he's tremendous in the community, and we'd like to get something done with Justin, and we'll continue to work towards that. But ultimately, it's up to Justin to determine if he wants to be here and whether, what he thinks he deserves and where we are. As long as we can get that to come together, we hope that does come together. But ultimately, Justin's going to make the decision whether he wants to be here or not, and we'll do everything we can to try to keep him.
Well, very few people have had the opportunity to have the connection with the fans in the city like you have. Von Miller, he's been the face of this franchise for the last decade. So what do you think his legacy is here in Denver? And how does that legacy make this offseason even more challenging for this front office?
Well, I think that, obviously Von's been a great football player for us for a long, long time. And I think, that's one of the big things we've got to do this offseason is to try to figure out a way that we can get Von Miller to finish his career here. I think that's the most important thing. I'd like to see that. I think for his legacy and what he's done, and that he should finish here, and hopefully we can get that done. So that's a priority for us. And as we get through this whole thing and get down the road, then we'll start attacking that and see if we can get something done with Von.
Well, just like the organization, Broncos country is also getting anxious to get back to the postseason. So what will it take for this team to get back to its historically winning ways here in 2021?
Well, hopefully we can get them back in the stadium first. That's what we'd like to do, is get them back so I miss the fans. There's no fun going to Mile High without Empower Field without the fans there. So looking forward to getting the fans back in the stadium, but also know that, our desire and will and commitment to, compete for world championship has not changed, and we'll continue to do that. And we're going to do everything we possibly can to try to get this thing turned back around.